Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are tackling a huge question. What are the most addictive drugs on the planet? We're going to break it all down with a clear, evidence-based ranking for 2025.
So, what is the most addictive substance on Earth? I mean, it sounds like a simple question, right? But it turns out the answer is, well, it's actually super complicated. It all depends on how you measure addictive. For example, are we talking about the drug that gets its hooks in you the fastest, the one that creates dependence almost instantly? Because if that's the case, a lot of experts would point to heroin. But what if we mean the one that's just the absolute hardest to quit, the one people go back to over and over again? Well, then you've got to talk about nicotine.
Or, hey, maybe we should measure it by the amount of damage it does to society. Factoring in crime, healthcare costs, all of it. If that's our metric, then alcohol is the clear winner. Or do we just go straight to the deadliest, the one with the highest chance of killing you? Well, then you're talking about fentanyl. It is absolutely in a league of its own.
Okay, so to make sense of all this and get a real answer, here's what we're going to do. First, we need to understand the toolkit. We're going to look at how scientists actually measure this stuff. And then, once we've got that down, we'll count down the top 5 based on a big, comprehensive 2025 analysis.
All right, first things first, the science. So how do experts actually figure out how addictive a drug is? You gotta know, this isn't just someone's opinion or a guess. It's a real scientific evaluation, and it's based on some very specific criteria.
Okay, so the first thing to get our heads around is that the clinical term for addiction is now substance use disorder. And this is huge. It's officially recognized as a brain disorder. So this isn't about willpower or a moral failing. We're talking about actual physical, long-lasting changes to the brain's hardware, the circuits that control reward, stress, and even our self-control.
So, with that in mind, experts have this, well, it's kind of like a scorecard, a set of key criteria they use to rank a drug's addiction potential. They're looking at things like how fast does it create dependence, how brutal is the withdrawal, how quickly do you need more and more to get the same effect, and how powerfully does it hijack your brain's reward pathways. It's a really thorough system.
All right, now that we have our toolkit, let's get to the countdown. Kicking things off at number 5 is alcohol.
Now you might be thinking, alcohol. It's legal, it's everywhere, how bad can it be? Well, that's kind of the point. Its widespread availability is a huge factor. But here's the kicker. The withdrawal from severe alcohol dependence can literally kill you. We're talking seizures, delirium tremens. It's incredibly dangerous. And globally, it contributes to 3 million deaths every single year. So yeah, it definitely earns its spot.
And check this out. This is what I find so fascinating. This analysis breaks down harm into 2 categories, harm to yourself and harm to others. And yeah, while drugs like heroin and crack are way more damaging to the individual, look at alcohol. It causes so much more harm to society, to other people. And that massive ripple effect is a huge reason why it's on this list.
All right, coming in at number 4, we have Benzodiazepines. You probably know them by their brand names, right? Xanax, Valium, Klonopin. They're prescribed all the time for things like anxiety or insomnia, but they come with a really serious hidden risk.
And here's the really scary part, the speed. We're not talking about months or years of misuse. You can become physically dependent on benzos in just 2 to 4 weeks. And get this, that can happen even if you're taking them exactly as your doctor prescribed. It's this perfect prescription trap, and once you're in it, it is so hard to get out.
Moving on to number 3 on our list, methamphetamine. This is a massively powerful stimulant, and it's fueling an epidemic that's reaching every corner of the globe.
So why is it so addictive? It really comes down to pure brain chemistry. Meth basically opens the floodgates for dopamine. That's the feel-good chemical in your brain. But we're talking about a flood that's way beyond any natural reward you could ever experience. The high is so intense that the brain becomes hardwired to chase it, often causing permanent damage to those very systems.
Our runner-up in the number 2 spot is cocaine. And if there's one thing cocaine is known for, it's an incredibly powerful psychological grip and just staggering relapse rates. People find it extremely difficult to stay away from.
And this is a perfect example of how the way you use a drug changes everything. See, powder cocaine, which is usually snorted, takes a little while to kick in. But crack cocaine, which is smoked, hits the brain in seconds. That creates this super intense but really short high. And that cycle is what drives this insane, compulsive need to use again and again and again.
And here we are at number 1, The top of the list is a category of drugs that has caused devastation like no other. Opioids. We're talking specifically about heroin and its synthetic and much, much deadlier cousin, fentanyl.
So why does this category take the top spot? Well, it's a brutal 1-2 punch. First, it creates an incredibly severe physical dependence, and it does it fast. Second, it's just unbelievably dangerous. Look at this number, 6. That's heroin's safety ratio. What that means is the dose that can kill you is only 6 times bigger than the dose that gets you high. The margin for error is practically zero.
And if that razor-thin margin for error wasn't bad enough, enter fentanyl. This stuff, it just completely obliterates it. Fentanyl can be up to 100 times more potent than morphine, and it's often mixed into other drugs without the user even knowing. That unbelievable potency is exactly why we're seeing an overdose crisis on a scale we've just never seen before.
So, when you step back and look at all 5 of these, what's the common thread? Well, there's a clear blueprint for how addiction works. They all hijack the brain's reward pathway. They all cause tolerance, meaning you need more to get the same effect. They all cause withdrawal, which drives you to use again. And they all create these deep, lasting changes in the brain that make addiction a chronic disease to manage.
Now I know what some of you are probably thinking. Where's nicotine on this list? And that is a fantastic question. See, in this ranking, which looks at a whole bunch of factors, it didn't make the top 5. But if you look at other studies that focus purely on how hard a drug is to quit, nicotine is almost always number 1. It just goes to show you what we said at the very beginning. Defining most addictive really depends on what you choose to measure.
And all of this leaves us with a really big, kind of provocative question to think about. We've seen that a legal drug, alcohol, causes more harm to society than heroin. And at the same time, the most lethal drugs are illegal. So, if a substance's legality has basically no connection to how harmful or addictive it actually is, it makes you wonder, how should we as a society decide which dangers we're willing to accept? Something to think about. Thanks for joining this explainer.